never rests.
Counting careless in the sky. What a thrilling time to be alive.
What's up, everybody? It's the Georgia Show. I'm Jake Rose, Jake Roos. It's Sunday night. It's Super Bowl Sunday, and we're coming to you just a little bit before the Super Bowl. We had to alter some schedules here and change some things up. But, Jake, there was a busy enough Georgia week. Nothing really standing out as the skyscraper necessarily in terms of what we need to get to. But so many different quick hitters that happened that I would have felt terrible if we didn't get to it in the week of relevance, I guess. And you know, we thought about pushing it to tomorrow, but I'm glad to be here. And we got a little Zach Branch, a little coaching edition, little Georgia government coming for you. Kirby spending habits in NIL, Scott Cochran update, and Georgia basketball a little bit. And then lastly, to end the show, obviously it's Super Bowl Sunday. We're going to talk about dogs in the NFL, dogs in the Super Bowl. But Jake Roos, let's just jump right into it. I heard a little bit of buzz this week on Zach Branch, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, if what you were hearing is the case, I think you'd said maybe a little bigger, a little more physical, stronger, perhaps than we had expected going into this thing. So, look, all news is good news for the most part when it comes to Zach Branch, especially into this end, right? I mean, getting him was the coup of the offseason. It was the biggest transfer that the Dogs landed far and away, no question about it. But to go ahead and start to hear some positive things beginning to roll in that end, you got to feel even better about the addition, Jake. I mean, this is a guy who Georgia is going to be relying on a lot, I think, in the wide receiver room going into this season. And it's off to a very positive start by all indicators.
I mean, one of the three biggest guys that Georgia could have added via the transfer portal, according to the transfer portal rankings. I mean, there's only two guys that, Carson Beck, I guess, was ranked ahead of him, was one of the three ranked ahead of him. And I guess you had Eric Singleton, and I'm not sure who the other guy was, who was number one before Carson Beck. But there weren't very many.
It was John Mateer.
John Mateer, that's right. So not a whole lot of guys Georgia could have added that would have been more impactful, again, according to the rankings than Zach Branch. But one of the things I wanted to bring up, Jake, as we kind of hit this quickly, listen, he's everything they thought he would be from a speed and explosiveness standpoint. They've been impressed in that regard. I know I've gone back and watched some stuff that I've saw a kind of a more physical, sturdy football player maybe than previously. But the thing I do wonder if Georgia can get any of this, because it's happened in the past. Some of that chip on your shoulder, I haven't lived up to the hype just yet. I've shown flashes, but it hasn't been there. Can Georgia be on the capitalization end of that for once? Because it seems like they've had some guys that have kind of lied in the weeds, a little late in the weeds that are here a little bit at Georgia and didn't break out, and they left and they didn't. And then they left and they did break out. They didn't struggle anymore.
Sure.
So now, you're hoping that can kind of happen between there, because I'm not necessarily sure it's an issue of how he was used at USC, but how maybe he was prepared at USC from a practice standpoint and like how your practice habits. And I don't know what you're laughing at right now.
It just came into my mind the way you phrased that and the way you were thinking about that. I was like, we're hoping that Zach Branch becomes Jackson Meeks. Ultimately,
a little bit.
At the end of the day, I mean,
a little bit, yeah. I didn't necessarily have Jackson Meeks in mind. I was more talking about like kind of A.D. Mitchell, even though that's a completely different story. Sure. But I was just thinking like maybe he could be the guy that comes to Georgia to break out, as opposed to going to some other school to break out, or leaving Georgia to go break out somewhere else. I did kind of sound like one of those myopic Georgia fans. It's like nothing good ever happens to us. It's always bad.
If he'll only become Jackson Meeks, we'll be better off.
Yeah, nothing good ever happens to you except John Mechie and Jamison Williams ripping their knees apart. That was
sure.
I mean, plus I hate it for those guys. I'm glad they both come back though. All right, so moving on from Zach Branch, Georgia adds Bryson Allen Williams, former South Carolina Gamecock, played for Will Muschamp there for a few years. Was a favorite recruit I think any of us have ever covered. One of the nicest kids you'll ever kind of meet up with, handled things the right way, did things the right way, had one of the his mother has since passed, Miss Darnisha, was one of the finest ladies. And here's something I want to get across to people. I think folks see Rusty kind of post something on Twitter, they see you mention her on the board, they see me mention her on the board, they see us mention Bryson, they think we're kind of hamming it up maybe. I've always kind of got that, like, maybe, oh, man, these guys are just saying nice things about people they know. No, man, 100% deserved. Just down to –
Darnisha was so cool, man. Darnisha was such a great lady. And the thing about her that was so cool, she not only did she really love her kids, man, she was just super invested in the recruiting scene in general.
She was.
Really worked with the Minority Coaches Association, and the Rising Seniors Foundation, and just a great, great lady. And it was always so kind. Antoine Jackson, his brother, another great guy too. I mean, just a couple of dudes easy to root for.
And one of those people that fought their medical battle just completely in silence. I had no idea. You know, I had checked in with her a couple times over the previous year, and she had, you know, did not complain. But also Bryson, you know, getting back to the football side of things, very bright up and coming young coach. Good recruiter, going to be a really good all-field recruiter in that Nick Williams, Montgomery Van Water, Buster Faulkner type role, where he'll get, you know, who else is somebody else who Brian McClendon kind of cut his teeth in that same way as an off-field coach. He's going to make his way there, and is just a talented coach in general. A lot of energy he's going to bring to the table. And listen, if Georgia's coaching staff, if that defensive coaching staff kind of vets you and says, hey, we want to bring you in. These days, when you're pinching pennies on the coaching front and trying to pay NIL and all that stuff, when they bring you in, you've got to be a difference maker. You've got to be a guy they've got a lot of confidence in. They see a lot in him to bring him in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I don't know if this crossed your mind, but I was like, you know, if some attrition were to happen, let's say somebody were to move on at some point, he's a guy I could see stepping in because he brings that juice. He brings that energy. Would he step in for a guy like Glenn Schumann? I don't know, man. I mean, it depends on if they wanted to go the coordinator route with somebody else or not. But I think that he's a guy who could find himself, you know, you work here for 2 years and then kind of move your way up. I could see it, Jake, personally. You're muted, Grandpa.
Ah, God.
Grandpa,
oh, man. I did it the other day with Rusty, too, and I was like, we had like 100 days without an accident up there on the board. Now we got to erase and start over. Now we went like 11 days without incident, and we're back on. I might have did that on Dawgs HQ Plus. In that case, I just told on myself. But, yeah, I could definitely – I think his future is certainly an on-field coach. You know, yeah. I certainly feel like that's the case. And, you know, real happy for him. I know he's probably going to be real happy to get back to the state of Georgia. Cedar Grove guy. He's going to help out in the Atlanta area. And, yeah, just a really, really good young coach, really good kid. And I think it's definitely a culture addition for Georgia. I don't know much about him as a coach, but, again, if they vet you and bring you in, I got to think, you know, they think pretty highly of you. And those guys know defense more than most people. Jake Roos, a little pivot here. We're going to go ahead and get with Prize Picks. And, listen, if you don't know what Prize Picks is, I'm going to tell you what Prize Picks is. It's daily fantasy. You jump in there, you read trends, you read box scores. It's skill-based. If you can get a good understanding of yards and touchdowns and what's expected in defenses and things of that nature, you too can earn through Prize Picks. Listen, we got a line up here. We got Patrick Mahomes. It's kind of tough to see up here on the screen, and I can't get it in large because I'm not very good at the internet. There we go.
There it is.
Patrick Mahomes, Nolan Smith, and Jalen Carter. We've got all three of them going over. I feel good about that Pat Mahomes pick. I think he'll have a yard passing. That's all you need to be right there. Nolan Smith, we got him over a quarter of a sack, meaning just need him to share one. And then Jalen Carter, same thing, over a quarter of a sack. I like both of those picks, man, based on how these two guys have played in the playoffs.
Yeah, no question about it, man. I think that's – I'm not saying it's easy, but it feels pretty strong to me.
I know if I was playing in this Super Bowl, I would have a sack. Where if I were
maybe you can get Nolan and Jalen in on one sack and just knock the whole thing out.
First play of the game.
Yeah, right.
First play of the game. And then the next play, Patrick Mahomes has a 2-yard completion, and we're cashing. I'm going to go ahead and spend that money before Prize Picks can even put it in my account. All right, Prize Picks, daily fantasy. Go check it out. Use the promo code DAWGS, 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 and get get $50 on your first play of $5 or more. Go to Prize Picks, check it out. Super Bowl Sunday, folks. I mean, come on. Get some fun in. Play some games. Gamify Super Bowl Sunday. Jake Roos was just telling me how he was gamifying Super Bowl Sunday a few minutes ago. and he's got some squares he feels pretty good about out here. So FBI, that's against the law. Go get him. All right, here we go. New bill in Georgia State Senate. Listen, there's a bill proposing that if you live in the state of Georgia, if you're a Georgia resident, Jake Roos does not apply to you. He will not be voting on this initiative at all because he's in Tennessee where they skimp from state income tax as it is. But they would exempt the NIL funds from state income tax. Listen, I don't give a rat's rear about any of this one way or the other. They could pass it. They could not. It's not going to bother me one way or the other. But this is 100% coming from Brent Key and Kirby Smart and Dale McGee and you name it. All these coaches in the state of Georgia who want their NIL dollars to stretch just a little bit further because Florida doesn't have state income tax. Texas doesn't have state income tax, and neither does Tennessee. Somebody else is missing it too, and I can't. I'm not. There's another.
Yeah, those are the two big ones.
Maybe Louisiana, if I'm not. Somebody else, but those three are the main ones.
Yeah,
and so that's what we're battling here. What do you think about it? I mean, does it bother you one way or the other?
I think it sucks, man. I think it's I don't if I were a Georgia resident, I would be upset by the proposal.
I don't care.
I get why they're doing it. I understand where this is coming from and what this is rooted in, and they're trying to level the playing field as much as is possible with this stuff. I just don't like the idea of personally. It's like, come on, man. Like you got people out here grinding and you got this guy out here playing college football and he doesn't have to pay taxes, but I'm having to pay my fair share when I'm out here digging ditches, man. I just can't get down with it. I think it's going to be super unpopular for the most part. I get what's going on. And from the football perspective, it does make sense. But I don't think people are going to get on board with it very heavily.
All right, listen. It's not our style normally, but for the next 10 minutes, we're going to get deeply, deeply political. Deeply political. I'm joking. No, we're not.
I mean, how do you feel? You're a Georgia resident.
I do not care. Because it's also, at the end of the day, it's kind of a drop in the bucket. Like, I get it. Like, it's kind of that whole student loan. It's kind of that whole student loan thing. It's kind of like, oh yeah, let's don't do this because the good can't happen to you, so the good shouldn't happen to anybody. But
it's not.
But at the same, I don't know.
We're talking about guys making real money here, Jake. This is not like drop it. Like I could get down if you were saying like, yeah, these are $30,000 earners, but like we're talking about $500,000, $1 million guys here. Like there's some tax implications to that.
Yeah, we're talking about like. But the thing is, we're talking about like 40 guys that matters with, you know.
Sure.
You know, and at the end of the day, it's not gonna be a budget stretcher or constrictor or anything like that. And the income tax, the state income tax rate is like around 5.5% or something like that. I don't know. It sucks. You know, I'd love it if they'd just take it off all of us, like none of us had to pay it. Right. That'd be great. Sure. I don't know. It just doesn't bother me.
Here's my thing too with it. Personally, it's hard for me to believe or kind of wrap my head around the idea that like this somehow makes the state of Georgia a much more attractive option for guys looking to come.
No, you're looking for margins. You're just
right. I mean, it's like just one little thing, but I can't see that being. I can't see the idea of like, hey, I got to pay a bunch of taxes being the make or break at the end of the day.
Ultimately, well, I will say, you know, there are stories out there of, you know, hey, it's April 14th, coach. And I spent all my money. I don't have any tax money left over from last year. What you got?
Sure.
You know, so-and-so's telling me they'll pay it.
Sure.
Yeah. So I don't know, you know, taxes are a big thing. You know, you start getting into 5%, you know, you're basically paying an agent and paying the state of Georgia at that point.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. You know, that's just, I don't know. They're pinching pennies too, I guess. All right. Kirby Smart, speaking of spending wisely. You know, Pete Naco is supposed to report over at On3 where he talks about how Kirby has gained the reputation of being a very thrifty spender when it comes to NIL. What did you make of that comment? Are they backhanded complimenting him?
No, I didn't take it that way at all. In fact, you used the word thrifty, and I don't know that they used that word in there.
They used that exact word.
Well, I would disagree with how the sentiment came across then.
Oh, I thought you were about to disagree with me, them using that exact word.
No,
Let's fight each other right now.
I would disagree with how that sentiment came across, because the way that I perceived those comments were, people were saying, look, Georgia is kind of making the most of their NIL money. They're not overpaying for kids. They're not kind of out here just throwing dollars down the drain. I think that my takeaway was that they feel like there's some wild spending going on out there, and that Georgia may be taking a little bit more controlled approach, but also one that's probably a little bit more sustainable and one that creates maybe a little bit better culture. Like I said, to me, the feeling was Georgia is taking their money a little bit further than everybody else. And also, too, they pointed to, and of course, no shock, right? Like the idea that, the weight of Georgia still means something. The national championship still means something. You're getting guys probably on a better deal than they would get at a lot of other places, because certain guys want to play in that system in Fort Kirby. So that was my takeaway from it. I didn't take it as negative in the least. But perhaps, when you say the word thrifty, it does kind of imply that, at least in my mind.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know, man. It's kind of tough to. I'm looking for the article right now. I was looking to see if the word thrifty was used in there, because I'm starting to feel like there's a Mandela. Starting to think this is Shazam or whatever that Sinbad movie was that I know I saw, but is apparently not real.
Yeah.
I guess I made that up. I'm a liar. At some point, it was
in real time.
It was out there at some point, and I feel like I'm being made fun of right now by the universe. But listen, I didn't take it that way either. I took it as kind of a, all right, man, like this guy's, this guy's has kind of a sustainable approach. And listen, I still question, and I've told you this, and I'll tell everybody this, I'm still questioning as to whether Ohio State bought one. As much as they got better at the right time, that their staff deserves a lot of credit, because that team was so vulnerable for so long, and they were kind of fortunate to get to where they got. They looked just as vulnerable through 12 games as Georgia did, 12, 13 games. But, Ohio State's, budget, they operated almost a $40 million deficit this year. Who can do that year after year? You can't. Sure. So what happens from here on out? Did Ohio State go and light the world on fire in the transfer portal again, Jake?
Not that I've seen.
Yeah. I wonder why.
Well, I think a lot of it probably came down to roster retention at the end of the day. The thing about it is, I said this as soon as they got done. You saw guys who went to the portal from Ohio State. And I was like, look, there's never been a better time if you were an Ohio State player. And I guarantee you every agent is saying this, to go hit up these guys for extra NIL money because of what just happened. The donors are happy. Now's the time to go hit the well again. And so I imagine that a lot of those funds got diverted to kind of keeping the band together.
Well, I also feel like Ohio State's dealing with some of the same economics that Jake Rowe dealt with back when he was 22 years old and had to decide whether he could drink on Friday or Saturday. Sometimes drinking on Friday and Saturday just wasn't in the cards, brother. So I think they're dealing with some of those same economic choices. And I think that's what, at least to a small extent, like, all right, guys, we can't spend what we spent last year. Like we got money. We're not going to be the sisters of the poor, but we got to try to do less with more this year, or do more with less. And hey, I'm also interested to see, Jake, what it's going to be like for them to try and defend a national championship. And everybody knows how much they spent to get that national championship. And it's hard to win back-to-back Super Bowls, the Chiefs notwithstanding, and a few other things, because even with pros, it's tough to kind of get back up and to get that whole thing going. Longer playoffs, shorter off season. How does that all work out for Ohio State? It's really uncharted territory. But I'll say this, and listen, I was critical of Ohio State, and I questioned the whole philosophy of buying big receivers, and I still do that. But man, whatever Ryan Day does after the way they fix that team after that Michigan game, that'll always click with me. Coaches that kind of get their team to flip the script, to turn over a new leaf in midseason. And whatever they do going forward, I'm going to have some trust in it, because I think Ryan Day is a really good coach, evidenced by what he did this year with this team. And Coaches can gain confidence too. Coaches can get to feeling themselves a little bit too. And Ryan Day might be his era, might be his time.
I know he's thrilled to have your endorsement.
I know he is. They've been asking for it for years.
Publicly on the Georgia show. He's been waiting for this moment.
Yeah. He has. Listen, I talked to Ryan Day the other day, though, when he told me and thanked me for the first time I endorsed him. He's going to call me again and thank me for doing it again. He'll do it every time. He's a good guy.
Certainly.
He told me he loves your microwave. He says your microwave. He's a big fan of that. He said it sticks out a little bit in there. It classes the place up a little much, but it's a good one.
No doubt.
All right. Hey, listen, in terms of some great news. Scott Cochran gets a head coach gig. I'm not going to lie. I'm always worried about people, substance abuse, taking on big gigs this soon, all that stuff. I'm not going to lie, but I'm also not going to sit here and play skeptic over a piece of good news for a guy who has always wanted to be a head coach and really does seem to be being very public and open with his struggle now in a way that maybe he wasn't as much before.
I had that same concern, Jake. I really did. When I heard this news, I was like, man, this seems soon. But on the flip side of it, man, nothing but the best for Scott Cochran. Hope it works out tremendously for him. I hope the guy is able to get every single thing he wants in life, man. And I hope he's able to, just continue to move in the right direction. Ultimately, I know that it's been a very public and very weird struggle for him. I know that the pressure has been immense, I'm sure, in many, many facets, but really am very thrilled to see that for Scott Cochran. I think he'll probably do a bang-up job, if I'm being honest, too. I don't know what the University of West Alabama's record was prior, but he's going to bring a lot of energy. He's going to bring some great connections in the state of Alabama. He's a guy who is going to be able to probably bring in some good coaches as well, some guys who will want to come work, some young guys. So, look, it's not going to be easy, I'm sure. And I don't know that anything has been for Scott in the last couple of years, but I do think that he is, I'm happy for the guy, and I hope he's happy, and I hope he's super, super successful. I know a lot of Georgia fans will be rooting for him.
And I think he will be. I think he'll put the effort and all into it. I do wonder, if he goes there and he's able to have some success, maybe he kind of hits his head against a little bit of a ceiling there or whatever. I do wonder if, he does it for a few years and kind of again, success and enough to kind of keep his job, get a couple extra contracts, but maybe not enough to grab that next head coaching job. Does it not help him grab another on-field job somewhere and then get back onto that track? Because it is tough to climb the ladder from a school like that. It can be.
Yeah, but I think that, his background, he was on the track already, and to me, like what popped into my head was Steve Sarkisian. And that was a pretty public struggle that he had. And then look at where he's at right now.
Yeah.
So, I think that it's a situation for Scott where, he could probably work his way back into something like that.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily even talking about the substance abuse thing. I'm more coming from the area of expertise. I understand. You know what I mean? Like, Sark was already kind of a successful head coach. He had, successful enough that he had gotten the Washington job, and then, USC had hired him from there. But I'm not really worried about his addiction. Either will or it won't get back in his way. I think the ultimate thing is like, can this guy climb the ladder and become a head coach? And it's either going to take him being ultra successful there and getting another head coaching opportunity, or it's going to take him being successful enough that somebody's like, oh man, we need to get this guy to come in and run our special teams, and then he can work his way back up from that angle. But he's not a super old guy either. I think he's just in his 40s. So he's not like one of these guys that's kind of in the latter stages of his career. You think he's probably got a good 20 years left, if everything works out for him. So maybe big another 15. So hopefully he can get a chance to do some big things. I know it was his dream at one point to be a head coach at a big time level. And, he certainly, that's certainly in play. Let's look at our friend over here, Andy Ludicky at My Perfect Franchise. Are you a displaced corporate executive, or are you somebody that's just looking to branch out on your own? Go check out Andy at My Perfect Franchise. Give him a call, myperfectfranchise.net. Listen, he's got a thorough evaluation and consultation process. It's free. It's totally free to you. And listen, for a limited time, for Andy's trying something out. He's a big college baseball fan, and something he's checking out is whatever referrals he gets and the franchises pan out and things like that, he gets from these individual sites over at On3 because he works with our Tennessee side, he works with our LSU side, all of those. If he gets those referrals are successful, then he's donating to that school's collective for baseball, big baseball fans. So he's doing that as a way to kind of incentivize you. And listen, I've been on a couple of calls with Andy. This is a resource. All right. If you and your family or anything like that, if you've been thinking about checking out a franchise or getting into the franchise business or getting into and owning your own business, that's what he's there for. He has experience with hundreds and hundreds of franchises. They can help you find your fit. They can help get you involved in that franchise, and they can kind of help you get going and help you find the best ones, the ones that are trending in the right direction. That's where he comes into play. So go check out Andy at myperfectfranchise.net, and he'll get you sorted out. All right, Jake, Georgia basketball, they're on the brink, and it's not in a good way. They lost. They let one slip away to Mississippi State last night after beating LSU earlier in the week. Still think they're in the NCAA tournament right now, but they got to find at least 3 more wins, and 4 would remove all doubt, and those are going to be tough to find in these last 8 games.
Yeah, especially given some of the struggles that they've had, man. I mean, it just feels like they've had moments of control, but then they just
7 games. I'm sorry.
But it feels like they've just had these moments of collapse. And I think yesterday you even pointed to the fact that between the first and second half, it was like they fell apart at the same time.
They did, yeah.
Down the stretch. So
they didn't fall apart as bad in the second half as they did the first, but they were leading by 4 in the first half. About 5 minutes in, they went cold. And then Mississippi State just kind of chipped away. They got the lead back, and they built it out to 9 points. And then Georgia comes back, Mississippi State pulls away. That's the way it worked all game long. And this one stings real bad, Jake, for this reason. It stings like Georgia losing the SEC championship game in 2021 because the defense let them down. And Georgia basketball is a very good defensive basketball team. Say what you want about everything else. Everything. Score basketball, Mike White, can't drop a play and whatever. All right. Mike White coaches great defensive basketball. And Georgia's a really good defensive basketball team. And boy, oh boy, did it let that basketball team down last night, because every single time Georgia shot the ball fairly well. They shot 38% from 3, which is a solid percentage for them as a team. They shot right around 50% as a team from the field. They shot 75% from the line. Mississippi State shot 6 of 18 from the line. They had a third of their free throw shots. Georgia could not stop Mississippi State from getting to the best 46 points in the paint. And I'm going to tell you right now, and this isn't really my style. I usually don't even kind of get close to this. But I've got serious concerns about the future of Georgia's basketball program under Mike White if Georgia doesn't, at the very least, bounce back against Texas A&M on Tuesday with an incredible defensive effort. If nothing else, I don't care if they don't score 30 points. They've got to play better defensive basketball, because it completely collapsed against Mississippi State in a game they absolutely had to have. When Georgia plays offensive basketball like it did last night, with the mistakes it made and everything, limiting the turnovers, shooting well, all of that stuff, it has to win those basketball games at home. And the fact that it didn't, that's kind of almost crushing. It is almost crushing. Georgia's got to scratch out 3 more wins, and it really would like to get 4 to get into the NCAA.
Let me put you on the spot. Do you think they do it?
I've got a little bit of confidence they do. What I see I don't expect them to beat Texas A&M at all. That's not one of the wins. But what I see against Texas A&M on Tuesday, if I see them bounce back defensively and Mike White still has them, I like them to get Missouri. I like them to beat Missouri at home, South Carolina on the road, and then get Vanderbilt at home to end the regular season. I think they can get those 3 wins, and then I think that gets them in the tournament. But a win in the SEC tournament definitely gets them in. Then it comes down to can they maybe upset Florida at home? They're not going to beat Alabama on the road. Could they get Texas on the road? Texas is gettable. So that's one of those things that Georgia needs to find a way to win 3 or 4 games down the stretch, at least 3. And, I think they will. I do think they will. And I think that'll get them in the NCAA tournament. But that's going to open a whole nother can of worms for me, because then, all right, you get into the NCAA tournament. Let's say you get in as a 9 seed, and then you go in there and you lose by 11 in the first round. Like, All right, that was a cool experience, but where are you at next year? What you got coming back? How you getting back? So that's where the focus turns. And listen, I do think it's objective that Mike White has done a great job. I think it's subjective that he has done a good job getting this team back to relevance where a loss on February the 8th matters. But I can't say that he's the guy to get Georgia over the top. We'll see if Georgia makes a change and when they make a change and how much better or worse they get from here on out. But they still got a chance, and I do still have a little confidence that they can get it done. This team is playing hard for Mike White.
Encouraging.
All right, Dogs in the NFL 2024 edition. Yeah, it is 2024. Dang, I thought I'd messed it up. It's 2025. All right, so huge year. Brock Bowers, Lab McConkey. We're gonna get to the Super Bowl guys here in just a second. Brock Bowers and Lab McConkey, George Pickens. I think all three went for over 1,000 yards. All pass catchers, University of Georgia. When you look back at this season, which Bulldog had the most memorable season for you? Which it could be a first-year guy, it could be a last one. Which one's season stood out to you?
No, it's Brock Bowers, man. Come on. I mean, yeah, dude, Brock Bowers showed up and is like a top 3 tight end in the league already as a rookie. I mean, the guy is unstoppable and played on an absolutely just dog shit Raiders team. I mean, the Aiden O'Connell was his quarterback, for God's sakes, man. I mean, look, it's Brock Bowers, and it's probably Brock Bowers walking away for me. The only thing that stopped him from winning Offensive Rookie of the Year was Jaden Daniels being an absolute freak at the most important position on the field. I mean, that was literally the only thing that could have even prevented it. Brock, man, yeah, I don't know how you're not blown away with him. Now, Ladd also too, man, I think what he did was really, really tremendous. And the fact that he was able to maintain his health and be able to just be available, really trending up for him too. But yeah, dude, it's Brock Bowers. I mean, the guy stepped in and is all, like I said, he's a top 3 tight end as a rookie. It's only up from here, man. We're trajectory says it's early on, but trajectory says gold jacket in the future. Okay.
Counterpoint. I've got a guy. And this guy, listen, I kind of fell in love with him this year. I don't think I loved him as much as I should have loved him when he was at Georgia. I think I treated this guy poorly. James Cook, man.
Yeah.
19 touchdowns on the ground this year, counting the playoffs. Jake, this kid through 3 playoff games this year racked up, and I'm having to do a lot of math here. And this is very tough because it's doing a short order, but I'm seeing roughly about 200. I'm seeing over 300 total yards in 3 playoff games this year for him. Over 100 yards a game in the playoffs, 3 touchdowns, and then during the regular season, 16 rushing touchdowns for him. Listen, every time I turned the television on and Buffalo was playing, James Cook was doing some pretty brutal stuff, and was kind of exposing some teams. He ended the season with 21 total touchdowns, counting the playoffs, 18 in the regular season. In a lot of ways, he was the MVP for the MVP.
What I would say about James Cook that has impressed me is it feels like he's really rounded his game out, man. I mean, he was a guy who I thought coming into the league was going to be a gadget guy.
Yeah, I thought he'd be a passing down back.
Me too. But he's
an every down back now,
no doubt. And I'm impressed by that, man. I just don't know that I ever saw that when he was at Georgia or even a little bit early on, man. I thought, like I said, he was going to be that passing down back. I am really impressed with him. His dedication to the craft. He's going to make himself some money here very soon. I mean, I think that
apparently smoke alarms are going off in my house.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
Middle of the night last night, and it was nothing. So we're hoping it's nothing right now again. We've got some. This is awesome. This is awesome internet here. Okay, stop. Thank goodness. We're having this issue. I was trying to get Jake Roos to pick it up. I didn't know what to do. We've just been caught completely off guard.
I didn't know what that noise was. I was like, is there an emergency happening? So
yeah, they just start all going off at different times.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but you talk about James Cook and kind of what he did, and man, now I'm looking at the roster. Like I'm looking at all the guys in the NFL: James Cook, Lab McConkey, Brock Bowers, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean. They were all on that 2021 team. And these are all objectively very good NFL football players now. And, hey, you look back at that 2019 LSU team, one of the greatest teams of all time, those dudes are ripping it up in the NFL. 2021 Georgia, those dudes are ripping it up in the NFL. 2020 Alabama, those guys are ripping it up in the NFL. Now Georgia's got to build another football team that can go beyond this and go rip it up in the NFL. That's what it comes down to. And they're working on that. They're working on that right now. They're developing, and they're trying to work on 2026. We'll have all that covered for you over at Dawgs HQ. This show's going way longer than we thought it would, and you got to hear my smoke alarm. So y'all take care.